I'd like to begin with Tehillim. We're all here to pay our Kavod Achron to our dear Father.
Can't hear.
Ron, Simon. If you will you come to the door?
Ashrei Yesha Shalom Halach B'Ftas V'Shalim V'Katem Ma'amad Moshe Leitzim Lo Yoshav Kim B'Torah Tonei Chapsal V'Savaso Ye'Yem Yom V'Yok Eitz Shul Atad V'Mayim Asher V'Yo Yitem V'Yol V'Alei V'Yibol V'Chol Asher Yaseh Yaseh Tochen HaRishoyim Kiyim Kamos Asher T'Kan Hora Aken Lo Yukumo Rishoyim B'Shafat B'Chaglim B'Tas Tzadikim Yodei Adonai Derech Tzadikim V'Derech Hashem Tovei.
Rabbi Marshall Gissner.
Bismo David, mir gut belefer. Wir schon Baruch Hashem, verlecht mir. So Tzedek, the Rogel al Shno, was so the real Ra. Careful when so al Kibro. Nizvinov Nimas. Yasire Adonai Kitabed. Nishbala Hara, the Emir, Hasbro Lord Nasan, Resh, Shofa, Amaki Lord. What's Ella, Lord Mokbella?
Ron was a good friend to all of us. You're somebody, someone that I knew for more than 30 years.
What is this?
Very certain situation. And the Achilles Foundation and also the Lavaya. We appreciate the immediate care that they showed us. It's a part of
Rabbi Chait.
I think we did a very grievous stuff. We lost our dear Rabbi Robbie. So we lost him a long time ago. He was struggling with various things. He struggled and battled all the time. And he was successful against it many times. He was able to get a PhD in linguistics. He was able to operate and think in Torah. He had a Seder every day. And he had a love for Torah. I went to visit him in the hospital. And he asked me to bring him a Sefer in Maleh. That's what I want to start doing. But the fact that he had these successes doesn't take away from the other ensemble that we lost years ago because of the illness and struggle. And the truth of the matter is that this is not an Avelis for me that began today or yesterday, but it began many years ago because the individual that I knew that was a pure genius and was a brilliant person and a great prophet. He was always kind, loving, expressed his love to other people. And he was always a pleasure to have, in spite of his words to have with you every day. But Ron, he is the second Ron. Ron that was lost. That Avelis began a long time ago. And that Avelis ceased because, as I'll say, that you can't have no harm for another, for a mace, a person that's still alive. That's why Yosef outside when he was killed, when his father was killed, he couldn't be Misnachim because he really was alive. And that was the same thing with Ron. The person was alive, the Avelis. And as I said, in spite of that, there were moments, a lot of moments we go through, but the value of it. But nevertheless, there was always a sadness for us. That's that we didn't take it away from him. We had another home. But the sudden departure came to us as a total shock. We never expected it. And we tried what we could. One is to feel up. We didn't do enough. And then we could have done more. That's something we all feel that we would like to be sure that we did what we could, but we can't. We will but the Avelis of Ron goes on. And his memory as an individual struggled against the various illnesses which he and was able to succeed many times. It shows the balance of the greatness of man. And his love for Torah, as I said, he had stayed very Jay. And his biggest enjoyment was to enjoy the good in spite of the incapacity which actually took a hold of his life in the way that Rabbi was. Rabbi mentioned once that one of the Gedolim, the Hesed wasn't so much in what he was, and what he could have been. And with Ron, that's what we feel. We feel that the famous sadness of his going this time, not to what he was, but to the image of what he could have been. And that is something which we feel a tremendous loss and a tremendous state of unease right now. So what we wish is that the source of his love, the source of his learning, and the genius abilities, of his great chesed, sure, could stand by him and stand by all of us. And we should always remember and be inspired by the great, courageous effort that he made and that he succeeded in. Something which is up and beyond human capacity. And something which is an ideal that we will eternally look forward. His inspiration will always be with us. Our love of him will always be with us. And will always have the inspiration and the feeling of genuine love and love for each other and the sheep are treated well. There's a model of Abbas Ray and Abbas Very. And the Hazel above, and there'll be many other speakers who will come to this. And I wanted to give it over to the other various points that
I'll be ready.
Okay, Rabbi Daniel Rosenthal, very good personalization.
Last Tuesday, Howie Burstein was in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim, from where I'm speaking. And before we got down to learning, he gave us an update in terms of Ron's situation. We go back with Ron not quite 40 years. And truth be told, I can speak about the years that Ron's was Ron, where he was with it. My first meeting with Ron was very interesting. I first get a telephone at the Yeshiva, Yeshivat Or Hatzafon, the high school, from what sounded like a young boy. He says, "My name is Ron Simon, and I'm interested in joining the school. But first, I have a few questions." First question is your program certified by the state? The secular program of Yeshivat Or Hatzafon, certified by the state of Washington. After I say yes and giving him some background, he further continues with the following question. He says, "Rabbi, can you tell me, is each member of your secular staff certified? Do they qualify on all state requirements, satisfy all state requirements?" So I go into my own song and dance and tell him, yes. Then after that, I say, "May I ask you a few questions?" And he says, "Go ahead, Rabbi." I said, "Can you read Hebrew? Can you read a Pasuk Chumash?" He says, "Yes." Now, it's very curious. As far as I knew, Ron had a Temple de Hirsch background, Reform background, and the school was not known for its expertise in Jewish studies. So I said, Mr. Simon, how do you expect to get into a school where there's a basic minimum of Hebrew background? He says, "Rabbi, I've been studying, and I would like to meet with you and to show you what I can do. P.S. In the next couple of days, I have the opportunity to meet with Ron." He takes out a Chumash, he starts reading, and he starts translating. And I said to myself, where in the world did this kid get this education? From where did he pick this all up? He said, Rabbi, they gave me a Hebrew teacher, and I did some of studying on my own, and I can handle it. I looked at him, and I was amazed. First of all, I was amazed that this kid was interested in coming to a yeshiva. I was amazed at his ability to present his requests and his questioning, which amazed me even further. And I said to myself, we got to get this kid. When I actually meet him, I'm blown away. I didn't show it. I have to play the game. But Ron was something unusual. A youngster I had not met before. And I started thinking back on Ron. And there are two psukim that come to mind. Perhaps the background of the psukim is this week. I'm not referring to the games coming up to determine the Super Bowl finalists. I'm talking about the Parshas HaShavua. Whereas people may be encamped around their TV sets watching the games, the Parsha has the Jewish people encamped around Har Sinai. Har Sinai. Vayichen Sham Yisrael Neged Hahar. And this reminded me of a very short psukim from the prophet Amos and of Yeshayahu. Amos says like this, without going into all the background. Hinei yomim ba'im ne'um Hashem. Days are going to be coming. And God says, Vishlachti ra'av ba'aretz, and I will send a famine into the land. Lo ra'av l'lechem. We're not talking about famine, no bread. Below tzama l'mayim, nor thirst for water. Ki im lishmoa et divrei Hashem, but rather to hear the word of God. Let me just go on one pasuk and draw a conclusion. So it says in Yeshayahu Nun Hey, Ho kol samei l'chu l'mayim. Oh, all of you who are thirsty, let them come to drink. Ba'asher ein lo kesef, and the person who has no the means, l'chu hivru v'lecho, and those who cannot afford it, come and eat. So, a very nice pasuk. What is it talking about? So, basically, the Ibn Ezra gives us some sense of understanding. Both Yeshaya and both Amos speak of a time when people are thirsty. It's not because they suffer drought. It's not because they're suffering from starvation, but because they're suffering from spiritual malnutrition, from lack of Torah, from lack of Devar Hashem. And when I think about it, I shudder and think about this little kid from Bellevue. I call him the Goyen of Bellevue. Comes in and he wants to hear Devar Hashem. And he does. His learning was unbelievable. That year that he entered the school, the summer before, he spent the whole summer in learning, and he fitted right in with the rest of the kids. And it was something. He spent a lot of time in our home. And my daughters, Pinny, they came like as one family. And we saw the development of a person with hishtokukut, with a smei as for Talmud Torah. And it wasn't simply a good summer romance. It was a serious undertaking. And the guy worked like a dog. And he produced and produced and produced. It was something to behold. It's almost a messianic thing of Klal Yisrael awakening. And here was an example of the koach, the potential of a Jewish young person, boy or girl. Ron has had a very, very difficult life. And in the end, it was very, very difficult, ending in his demise. But when you think about what he accomplished, whether it's the fact that at the age of 15 or 16, Princeton was interested in hopping him for the University of Princeton, or whether it's the fact that despite all his subsequent source when he was an older person, that he gets his PhD in linguistics. And the fact of the matter is that this was a gentleman who fought the fight of Torah in trying to be a good Jew, trying to raise a family, trying to have kids, and trying to get along, but he couldn't do it himself. And in fact, truth must be told, the yeshiva took Ron in, Rabbi and Mrs. Chait, the chevra, in my time, Rabbi Mann and Mrs. Mann. Everybody rallied around Ron to see that he succeeds, to see that he's well, to see that he's taken care of. But chevra, what I remember of Ron, and it's something that we need to keep in mind. You saw an individual with an unlimited avas haTorah, unlimited dedication to Yiddishkeit, and wanting to be counted among Klal Yisrael. As I speak, I was told that his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Steve Simon, are listening to me. I know that you are currently grieving, and it's a grievous loss, to say the least. But however, your acquiescence and support of his study gave him nachas, and it should give you and Mrs. Simon nachas that Ron had very good times in his life and accomplished a heck of a lot. May his memory be a blessing.
We're here to spend our kavod, to say kavod akram to Ron and the Anna.
Rabbi Dr. Rosenthal. As I mentioned, Ron was brilliant. He was sweet. He was very tough, very kind. He was a dear son, brother, father, and friend. Mishlei, Proverbs chapter 4 teaches us, K'nei chachma, K'nei bina, al tishkach. Well, take imrei food. Acquire wisdom, acquire understanding. Do not forget, and do not swerve from my words. This was Ron's life mantra. He loved wisdom, he loved learning, and he never lost that childlike curiosity. First met Ron in the summer of 1981. He came for Shabbos and stayed in our house the entire summer. I did not know it then, but his romance with Yahadus had begun. My father mentioned he came from a graduate of Temple to Her Sinai to be a true Talmud Chacham in 5 years. A truly meteoric rise. My father mentioned how he himself, on his own initiation, basically enrolled himself in Yeshiva. And within a relatively short time, he went from person just to be able to read and translate Psukim, which he taught himself essentially, to being Messiah Masechtos, many Masechtos while in high school, which is just remarkable. My memory is in Seattle that we go around and he would have a book underneath his arm, the Jastro Dictionary. He literally read the entire Jastro. He had the most phenomenal grasp of all varieties of Aramaic. He could translate any Gemara, Targum, Yerushalmi. That's it. Just mastered. He was tremendously gifted in all things language. And of course, he had a phenomenal memory. Certainly anything about language was phenomenal. Now, learning with him, however, was not always easy. His genius mind felt that what theories you presented were not clear enough. His commitment to MS demanded clarity. Therefore, you ultimately benefit when he finally announced that your svara, your theory, your idea was possible. Not necessary, possible. That was a high compliment in learning with Ron. It was a possible svara. As we mentioned, he pursued and received his doctorate in linguistics from the City University of New York. And people do not know, he was very well versed in Plato and Aristotle and many, many works of logic and epistemology. Many of us in the yeshiva who had a chance to discuss deep ideas, we enjoyed that tremendously. He taught high school students in the 1990s at the Torah Academy of Suffolk County. Some of the students are here today. The students loved him because he had this calm, warm, gentle, and pleasant demeanor. They felt that he was on their side. He helped in the resource room with students who needed extra help. He had tremendous patience with students who were struggling in their academic studies, both Moody Kodesh and Moody Chol. And here we have this genius. He's helping this person on the most basic thing of learning how to decode a Rashi, or get through a Mishnah, or write a composition. It didn't bother him. He'd sit for hours. The guy was a Mossman. He'd sit and focus, just have that Sitzfleisch, which was just unbelievable. My wife pointed out to me that Ron was the best listener. If you shared an idea or a problem with him, he listened to you if you were the only person in the room. He did not judge you. He empathized with you, and he felt your pain in a very true, honest way. He carefully thought of what you said and was insightful and helpful. This uncommon combination of being able to discuss lofty philosophical ideas, technical linguistic details, and still have a strong, sensitive, wise interpersonal skill is what made Ron such a rare and special person. When I think about my time spent with Ron, I remember how much fun we had together. He had a great sense of humor, a great giggle, a wonderful, warm smile. We were roommates in both Seattle and in Far Rockaway for over 10 years. His friendship during those formative years helped me become who I am. In 1996, we both celebrated the birth of children. And as young fathers, we discovered new skills put together, including changing diapers and sleepless nights. Sarah was always the most special part of Ron's life, and all of his efforts to succeed were motivated by his desire that he should be able to provide her with the love and support that she would need to flourish. Ron faced many challenges in his adult life. Many caring doctors and loving friends and family worked together to help Ron succeed and lead a healthy, functional life. Throughout the years, there have been ups and downs, but Ron always knew that he was not alone, that he was part of a loving community who always was there for him. But sadly, this time, Ron succumbed to the challenges. I am very personally grateful to many people in the Far Rockaway community who were his friends and safety net. Rabbi and Rabbi Chait, my wife Marie Beth Rosenthal, Robbie Schwartz, Moshe Meisels, Dave and Sarlia Markowitzes, the Harbitals, and so many others that pitched in. Specifically, a special akar satov to Howie and Hinda Burstein went above and beyond. They were always there and lovingly and responsibly knew what had to be done. Ron was a great man. He was a brother. I'll miss him forever. Yehei Yisrael Chait.
Rabbi Schwartz.
Maybe looks good in these things.
Indeed, we're all here to pay kavod achron. We're all here to pay kavod achron to Ron Simon, because we all knew what an amazing person he was. We knew his value, we knew his goodness, his sensitivity, and his gentility. I don't think anyone spent, in the last 15 years, I don't think anyone spent more time with him than I did. I never saw him in my entire life get angry. When Hurricane Sandy came, he was washed out completely. He didn't even have a pair of pants to wear. Took it in stride, okay. He never complained about the terrible turns his life took. His two illnesses that he struggled with so much for so long. Two debilitating illnesses. Instead, he worked as hard as he could to overcome the limits, to control his negative feelings, and to accept his lot in life. Ron was quiet, and Ron was a quiet person. He was a thoughtful person. There wasn't much in this physical world for Ron to be happy about. Not much at all. His worldly possessions pretty much consisted of his computer, his books, and his mind. As I said, he and I had many, many conversations about so many topics. And I don't remember ever bringing up a subject where he said, I don't know anything about that. But he never wanted to project himself as a person of superior knowledge either. He wouldn't tell you what he knew. Ron never learned a fact, an idea that he forgot or that he had to look up again. You heard many times that Ron had a PhD in linguistics. I once asked him, linguistics is the study of comparative knowledge, of comparative languages, right? He said, no. I said, then what is it? He looked at me and he said, it would just take too long to explain. Years later, I asked him again. He must have thought about it a lot because now he had a short answer. He said, it's the study of how we use language to express what we are thinking and feeling, to express our emotions and our ideas. It's not the language. Language is an accident. How you say, what words you use to say it. It's the mechanics of how you use language to express those feelings, to express those ideas. Complicated stuff. Not to Ron. And that was Ron's life's work. Quietly pondering the meaning of ideas, the meaning of feelings. As everybody here knows, Ron was difficult to engage in conversation, especially to talk about himself. But he listened to everyone. He listened to everything you said. He paid attention to everything in his own quiet way. And somehow, the attendance here attests to that fact that somehow we all felt some kind of a connection to him because of his gentility and his ability to be there, present, when you were talking. Indeed, he and I talked about many personal things, and he made it easy for me. He had an amazing sensitivity and an amazing understanding of the human condition. Not just theoretical psychology, but an abiding ability to feel someone else's pain. He knew all about human compassion, but he never talked. The things that he couldn't do in his own life, which were many, he worked harder to understand. We all know he was fiercely independent and brilliant. I don't think I ever won an argument with him. But while he was sitting there mentally disagreeing with what I was saying, I always felt his intense concentration. He was listening. If someone had a thought about something, he was eager to hear it, no matter how wrong he might have thought it was. Ron was so quiet, but we all of us knew what a deep person he really was. But not just intellectually. He was smart. but he rarely opened up with his emotions. But he shared with me some things that I don't know if he shared with anyone else. He talked to me about how happy he was in his marriage. He talked to me about how much he loved his daughter Sarah. And when he realized that she, as a young woman, needed his support, emotionally, financially, he worked like a dog. He worked as hard as he could to do just that, support her in any way he could. In closing, I'll share with you the most profound emotional thing I ever heard him come out with. It's so beautiful that we heard from Rabbi Rosenthal in Israel, because he shared with me the enormous hakaras hatov that he felt to Rabbi Daniel Rosenthal and his wife Rama, who took him in their home when he could no longer live at home, treated him like their own son. He told me this. Ron, imagine. And he appreciated it. And he told me how much he did. Once. But even more than that, that was not all of it. He expressed to me how much he appreciated, how much he deeply appreciated the fact that the Rosenthals single-handedly brought him into a life of Torah, a life of studying halacha, Jewish philosophy, that gave him the very roadmap to his entire life. And that's why we're all here, to celebrate his life. Because as quiet as Ron was, as much as he didn't project his personality out into the world, nevertheless, I think we all knew who he was. We all knew what he was. The pasuk in Eov says, Ki ata shachavti va'eshkot, yashanti az yanuach li. For now I would be lying tranquilly. I would sleep. Then it would be restful for me. Restful. Hey nishmosot tzor chayim.
It's nice to hear. I call on our Dave Makowitz.
When I heard that Ron had passed away, many thoughts went through my mind. Different recollections, memories, and impressions that I had about and with Ron. I thought to myself, how can I collect all of these thoughts to deliver a coherent message? So I thought, what am I trying to accomplish? What really is the purpose of a hesped? So I think that a hesped is based on a fundamental idea that a human being, a tselem Elokim, is something different than any creation in the world. A person is something that is unique, irreplaceable, cannot be duplicated, and the individual has infinite value, immeasurable value that can never be replaced or duplicated in any way. When you lose a chaver, a friend, you're actually losing something in your life that is more valuable than most of the things you can think of, most of the things that you have in this world, well, all of the physical things. Anything material, a chaver, the loss of a chaver, you're losing something infinitely valuable that you can never, ever replace, never duplicate, and never replace. So I think that a hesped, we cannot really ask what is the purpose of a hesped. I think in a sense, a hesped is really purposeless. The hesped is really a natural, a spontaneous response to losing the most valuable thing that you have. It's just a spontaneous human reaction that you cannot avoid. It's not a purposeful, willful action. It is just spontaneous. I think when I think of Ron, and all of the previous speakers, and I'm sure every person in this room, if I asked what comes to your mind when you think of Ron, of course you will think a brilliant genius. And Ron was a person that his whole life, really, his interest in his whole life was learning, studying, not only Limudei Kodesh, every area of thought interests him. And he really dedicated his life to that. When he got his PhD in linguistics, like Robbie, I asked him about the linguistics, and I realized it's a subject that really contains quite advanced ideas. It requires a very subtle and advanced mind. And I think that certainly Ron belonged in that category. When we had Ron over for Shabbos meals, naturally, my wife Sarleh is interested in grammar, so the conversation usually centered around grammar. And I just marveled listening to Ron, the way he explained different technical points. I didn't really understand a lot of it, but I know Sarleh enjoyed it, and it was really, you could just see the depth of his thought. As great as Ron's intellect and intelligence was, he had equally great humility, which I thought was really, I've never seen it before. When you spoke to Ron, you just never got the feeling that there was any trace of pride, of arrogance, any kind of competitive attitude. It seemed almost as if he didn't know he was smart. And I used to think, how can a person be so smart and yet he doesn't communicate any feeling about himself that he feels that way. He just talks like a regular person and no airs, nothing. But I thought perhaps that we learn, of course, that true humility comes not because a person is working on himself because he wants to be humble, but true humility comes when a person really has better things to think about than himself. He simply is not really too concerned with himself. So I think that high mila, that high level, really we can attribute to Ron, that he really was totally just absorbed in what he enjoyed, in the ideas that he enjoyed thinking about, and he just simply did not really think about himself. So I think that these two traits together really leave me with an impression of a person that achieved a real measure of perfection. He had the brilliance, but he had as well the anivas. And I think that I can speak for everybody here to say that Ron, you will never be forgotten.
I have to ask Ron. Ron was a gibor. In the last couple of months, we witnessed how great his struggle was. I'll share how successful Ron was in overcoming his unbearable burdens in the last 2 months. Ron was a regular guest at our Yom Tov meal. This Sukkot was no different. We arranged to meet at the Nate's Minyan and walk together to Inwood. This was an annual Sukkot routine for us. We had Kiddush and learned until lunchtime. The learning was always great. Yom Tov after Yom Tov, and time flew by. It was so easy to discuss ideas with Ron, even during Kiddush learning. This Sukkot in particular, Ron was very successful in his Milchemes HaChaim. He was positive, motivated, and reached out to me to join a learning seder in Inwood.
Wow.
Looking back, I see what tremendous gevura this required. We are not privy to a person's inner struggles. They were there, and despite that unbearable burden, Ron was the best I've seen him in years. While walking to my house, Ron asked what I was learning. I replied, I just started learning Nefesh HaChaim, the Rav Poni, in my community. He expressed surprise due to the Kabbalistic content. I told him a Kabbalistic idea expressed by Rav Poni, and that I responded I wasn't sure if it was true. Ron knew the concept and the problem with it. He was knowledgeable of the whole framework of Kabbalah and had such a clarity of thought on that. He was able to zero in with precision on the essence of any matter he discussed. He said in the name of Rebbe that if one can gain knowledge from portions of Kabbalah, it's worthwhile to study those portions. He really was on top of his game and enjoying it. His gevura was on full display. He said he learned Nefesh HaChaim 4 times and right away asked to join the Seder. He called me the week after Sukkot to ask if there was Seder. I had left a message for Rav Poni. Rav Poni called back and was hesitant. I expressed how important it was for Ron. Rav Poni formed a chavura with a few others 2 weeks later. During those 2 weeks, Ron called me each week to find out if there was a Seder that week. He was motivated. Again, his gevura was on display. Ron enjoyed the Nefesh HaChaim Chabura, and on the way home in the car, explained the position of Rabbi Chaim Volozhin later in the Sefer that had bearing on what we learned that evening. This is what we should remember. Ron was a gibor who fought courageously in his Muhammad Sahayim and had victories. Those victories are his for eternity. Tachas compassion.
Ron's daughter Sarah will be sitting Yeshiva at 422 Berrywood Court, West Hempstead, through Sunday. The tour will be in Seattle. Paul Brother. Let's go to the camera.
El Maleh Rachamim Shochem Bamromim Ametzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Ashchina Amalos Kedoshim Utaorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Es Nishmas Ron Ben David Shalach Lelamo Bavur Shekin Fashon Ben Rabbi Daniel Yitain Sudagavar Haskaras Nishmaso Began Edim Tiei Menuchaso Lachein Bala Rachamim Yasti Reyu Bisei Cirkin Pablo Lamim Bitzror Achayim Dis Nishmaso Adonai Hu Nachlaso V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkovo v'nomar amen.
That's amazing.